The dojo was cold that morning, colder than usual, as if the air itself had grown tired of watching the young warrior fail. He knelt on the wooden floor, shoulders slumped, breath shaky from another long night of practice that led nowhere. The room smelled faintly of incense and old timber, a scent he once found calming, now suffocating. Before him lay his wooden training sword, its surface dented and worn from countless attempts at the technique he still couldn't master. He lifted his hands and stared at them. They trembled, not from exhaustion, though that was real, but from doubt. From the quiet, creeping fear that perhaps he simply wasn't capable of greatness. He had set a goal, a clear one: master the final form of the crescent strike before the end of the season. But the more he chased it, the further it seemed to drift. He slammed his fists onto the floor. The sharp crack echoed through the empty hall. His frustration filled the space like smoke. He didn't hear the master enter. The old samurai's footsteps were soft, unhurried, like the slow breathing of a calm river. The master carried nothing but a simple broom, its wooden handle smoothed by years of use. Without acknowledging the apprentice's frustration, he began to sweep the floor. The strokes were slow, deliberate, identical. Forward, back, forward, back. The broom whispered across the wood, gathering dust, small leaves carried in by the wind, tiny specks of dirt that no one else would even notice. The apprentice watched him, confused and annoyed. Finally, the pressure inside him burst. "Master," he said sharply, "why can't I do it? Why can't I learn the technique? I've trained from dawn to dusk every single day. I've set the goal, I've visualized the outcome, I've done everything you said. And still it escapes me." The master continued sweeping for a few more seconds, as if weighing his response not in words, but in breath. Then he paused, leaning slightly on the broom. He still didn't look at the apprentice. "You chase the peak," the master said in a voice calm enough to quiet storms, but ignore the path. The apprentice felt a flicker of irritation. "What does that mean? I'm practicing, I'm working hard." The master lifted the broom again and resumed sweeping. Forward, back, forward, back. Each motion was almost meditative. He did not rush, he did not strain, he simply followed the movement with unwavering consistency. "When I was young," the master began, "I too set goals. Grand ones. I wanted to master every form, every strike, every stance. I wanted people to look at me and see a warrior destined for greatness." A soft smile, barely visible, touched the corners of his mouth. "And because of those goals, I failed more times than I can count." The apprentice frowned. "But goals give direction." "Direction, yes," the master replied. "But not transformation." The broom glided across the wooden boards again, gathering a small line of dust. The movement was strangely hypnotic. There was no tension in the master's shoulders, no hesitation in his arms. It was as if each sweep was connected to something deeper than muscle. "Transformation," the master continued, "comes from what you repeat, not from what you desire." The apprentice's breathing slowed. Something in the master's tone forced him into silence. The old samurai finished sweeping a small section of the floor and stepped forward to another, his motions perfectly consistent. Nothing about the act was special. Yet everything about the presence, the discipline, felt profound. The apprentice watched the master's ritual, the quiet precision, the calm focus, and realized how many times he had ignored such moments. He had believed mastery lived in dramatic breakthroughs, big wins, powerful accomplishments. But the master's sweeping told a different story. "You see me sweep," the master said. "Do you think I do it to clean the floor?" The apprentice hesitated. "Yes." The master shook his head. "I sweep to discipline the mind. The floor becomes clean only as a side effect." A chill moved through the apprentice, not from the cold, but from recognition. The master wasn't cleaning, he was training. Training presence, training patience, training focus, a system hidden inside a simple task. "You train for a goal," the master said, "and fail because your mind is tied to the outcome. You celebrate too early or suffer too quickly. But if you build a system, a rhythm you repeat every day, you become the kind of warrior who cannot help but reach the peak." The apprentice's throat tightened. He looked down at his sword again, suddenly understanding why he had been stuck. Every time he practiced, he carried desperation in his chest. He wanted results, proof, achievement. His swings were inconsistent, emotional, rushed. He wasn't building a system. He was chasing an ending. The master stopped sweeping and finally faced him. His eyes were steady, ancient, and impossibly clear. "Set systems," the master said quietly. "Not goals. and you will achieve far more than what you chase. The dojo fell silent again. But this time, the silence felt different, no longer suffocating, but open, like a doorway. The apprentice bowed his head, letting the truth settle into his bones. He didn't need to chase greatness. He needed to build the habits that made greatness inevitable. The master resumed sweeping, forward, back, and for the first time, the apprentice understood the beauty in the repetition. A new beginning had just been born. The next morning arrived quietly, long before the first streaks of sunlight touched the roof of the dojo. The air outside was cold, still, and dark, yet the apprentice stepped inside with a different presence than the day before. Something in him had shifted, not dramatically, not loudly, but deeply enough to change the way his feet touched the floor. He no longer rushed inside with a heart full of frustration. He entered like someone beginning a ritual. He placed his wooden sword on the ground and sat before it. For several breaths, he didn't move at all. He simply let the silence settle over him. The faint smell of old cedar and incense held the room in a familiar embrace. The memory of the master sweeping the floor replayed itself in his mind, not the broom, not the dust, but the rhythm. A quiet, unwavering rhythm of presence. He rose slowly and began breaking the technique into smaller fragments. Instead of swinging the blade in a full, complex motion, he practiced just the first footstep. A slow shift of weight, heel pressing down, toes following with intention, nothing dramatic, nothing that looked impressive, but it was controlled, steady, exact. He repeated that step again, and again, and again. At first, it felt strange, even too simple. His mind tried to push him forward, urging him to attempt the full technique. But each time that impatience appeared, he remembered the master's words, transformation comes from what you repeat, not from what you desire. So he stayed with the small movement. One foot forward, one breath in, one breath out, no emotion, no rush. Hours passed. The sky outside brightened from black to deep blue, then into the pale silver of early morning. Light spilled into the dojo, soft and cold. The apprentice continued, step, breathe, step, breathe. His body warmed, but his mind remained still. By noon, he moved to the next fragment of the technique, the angle of the wrist. The slow pivot of the sword, the gentle raising of his elbow. None of it required strength, only attention, deep, fearless attention. He practiced these fragments until the movements no longer felt separate. They began to link together, forming a chain. Not a perfect one, not a beautiful one, but a growing one. In the days that followed, he built a system without giving it a name. He woke before dawn, entered the dojo in silence, and repeated his ritual. Small movements, slow breaths, focused mind. He kept the same order every day, the same rhythm, the same deliberate patience. Even when he felt impatient, he bowed to the ritual. Even when he felt tired, he returned to the fragments. The master rarely interfered. He would pass by the doorway, glance inside, and continue walking with the same broom in his hand. Sometimes he watched from the corner, but he offered no corrections and no praise. The apprentice realized that this too was part of the system. The master no longer had to guide him. The path was guiding itself. Weeks passed, though the apprentice no longer counted time by days. He only measured progress through repetition. Through the feel of the floor under his feet, the steadiness of his breath, the softness of his grip. The world beyond the dojo faded. There were no goals left to chase, no deadlines to outrun. Only a practice that deepened with every sunrise. One evening, long after sunset, he stood alone in the dojo. The only light came from a small lantern near the wall, casting long shadows across the polished floor. The air felt different, thicker, heavier, as though holding its breath. Outside, the night wind whispered through the trees. The apprentice lifted his wooden sword. He began the technique. He didn't think about the steps. He didn't try to force anything. His body moved the way water moves downhill, smooth, inevitable, unbroken. His foot slid across the wood with perfect balance. His wrist turned at the exact angle he had practiced thousands of times. His breath aligned with the motion, guiding it, fueling it. The blade sliced through the air with a quiet, graceful force. When he finished, the dojo was silent again. He stood there, breathing softly, realizing he had just done the technique flawlessly. Not because he aimed for it, not because he chased the goal, but because the system he built had shaped him into someone capable of performing it. He hadn't even noticed the master watching from the shadows. The old samurai stepped forward, but this time his footsteps were not silent. They echoed gently, like a respectful applause from the room itself. The master's expression didn't reveal pride or surprise, only calm acknowledgement, as if this outcome had been inevitable from the moment the apprentice stopped chasing and started building. The apprentice bowed deeply, the weight of the moment settling in his chest. Not the weight of victory, but of understanding. He finally saw that the transformation had not happened in the final technique. It had happened in the countless small, quiet repetitions that shaped his mind long before they shaped his skill. The master placed a hand on his shoulder, firm and steady. "You have become the system," he said. And with those words, the dojo no longer felt cold, empty, or intimidating. It felt like home, a place where mastery was not an achievement, but a rhythm, a breath, a way of being.